I never thought I'd be the kind of person who'd hold on to grudges. Growing up, my mom used to say, "Let go of bitterness, Emily. It only poisons your own heart." But what she never prepared me for was that sometimes bitterness can be the only thing keeping you going, the only fire that pushes you to fight harder. My name is Emily, and if you've ever been the less successful cousin at family gatherings, you'll know exactly how I felt for most of my life. My relatives, especially my Aunt Lillian's kids, Brandon and Chloe, loved to remind me where I stood in the family hierarchy. Let me paint you a picture. I grew up in a modest household. My parents were hardworking, but money was always tight. Dad worked long hours at a local hardware store, and Mom took on sewing jobs from neighbors to keep food on the table. We never starved, but luxuries, forget about it. Vacations, new cars, designer clothes, those belonged to other families, not us. Meanwhile, Aunt Lillian married into money. Her husband, Uncle Robert, was a flashy real estate investor who seemed to breathe wealth. Their kids, Brandon and Chloe, grew up in a massive suburban house with a pool, went to private schools, and got cars for their 18th birthdays. To say there was a gap between our families would be an understatement. Now, don't get me wrong. I never resented them for having more. What I did resent was how they used it as a weapon. Every holiday gathering was a performance, and I was always the audience. "Emily, you're still taking the bus to work?" Chloe would ask in front of everyone, her manicured nails clicking against her champagne glass. Or Brandon would smirk. Across the table, "Hey Em, when are you finally moving out of that shoebox apartment? Don't you get tired of renting all your life?" The digs were constant, and even when they pretended it was a joke, I knew it wasn't. My mom would squeeze, my hand under the table, silently telling me not to react. My dad would glare, but he never spoke up. Maybe because he didn't want to escalate things, or maybe because deep down he felt the sting too. I tried to tell myself I was above it, that their opinions didn't matter. But anyone who's ever been humiliated in front of family knows the truth. It does matter. It digs into you, festers, and makes you question your worth. By the time I hit 27, I was still renting a small apartment in the city. I worked as a junior marketing associate at a mid-sized firm, scraping by with just enough to cover bills and maybe a coffee out once a week. Meanwhile, Brandon was showing off his latest condo purchase. And Chloe had just gotten engaged to a guy who drove a Tesla. At night, I'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if maybe they were right, if I was destined to always be the cousin who rents. But life has a funny way of turning tables. The shift started when my company got acquired by a bigger firm. I was nervous at first, thinking layoffs were coming, but instead it opened new opportunities. I landed a promotion to senior brand strategist, and with it came a much bigger salary. It was the first time I didn't feel like I was gasping for financial air. Instead of running straight to a realtor, though, I made a different choice. I started saving. I devoured books on personal finance, budgeting, and real estate. I cut back on unnecessary spending, lived simply, and every bonus went straight into my investment account. Meanwhile, I watched my cousins continue their flashy lifestyles. Brandon posted Instagram stories from rooftop bars every weekend, and Chloe bragged about their family legacy of always owning property. Inside, a quiet determination was growing in me. One day I thought, one day I'll show them I'm not the failure they think I am. That day would come sooner than I expected, because sometimes people who fly the highest don't realize how close they are to the ground until it all comes crashing down. And that's where my story really begins. The gathering was supposed to be about love, family, and celebration. At least that's what the invitation had said. Chloe was throwing her engagement party. Of course, it wasn't some cozy backyard cookout like my parents might have arranged. No, this was an extravagant affair held at a downtown rooftop venue with panoramic views of the city skyline. The moment I stepped out of the elevator and into the open-air terrace, I felt the familiar weight press against my chest, that creeping sense of not belonging. Everyone seemed to be dressed in designer labels, sipping champagne and laughing like life had never handed them a single struggle. I had spent the past week deciding what to wear. I couldn't afford anything new, so I pulled out my best navy blue dress, the one I wore for office presentations. I paired it with a simple necklace Mom had given me. I told myself, it's classy, it's enough. But as I looked around at sequined gowns and sharp-tailored suits, doubt whispered otherwise. I spotted my parents near the buffet, awkwardly holding glasses of sparkling water, trying to blend in. Relief washed over me. At least I wasn't alone. Over here. Chloe's voice rang out like a bell. Heads turned. My stomach clenched. She walked toward me in a glittering silver dress that clung to her like it was designed for royalty. Her fiancé, Trevor, trailed behind, tall and smug, with that permanent half-smile that screamed arrogance. "You made it," she squealed, air kissing me on both cheeks. Then, lowering her voice just enough, she added, "I wasn't sure you'd come." "Rooftop venues aren't really your scene, are they?" I forced a smile. "Well, I wanted to celebrate with you. Congratulations." She tilted her head, scanning me up and down. "Thanks, cousin. Oh, you look work ready." She let out a little laugh, as if I'd shown up in pajamas. Before I could respond, Brandon swooped in, already holding a glass of whiskey. He clapped me on the back a little too hard. "Emily, still renting that shoebox downtown?" I froze, my smile stiffening. "Yes, I'm still at the same apartment." Brandon raised his voice so others nearby could hear. "Can you believe it? Almost 30 and still paying someone else's mortgage. When are you going to grow up and buy something of your own?" A ripple of laughter spread among the cousins and their friends. My cheeks burned. "I'm working on it," I muttered. "Oh, come on," Chloe said, grinning. "You say that every year. At this point, you're probably better off just staying a renter forever. Some people just aren't meant to own." Her fiancé chuckled. "Yeah, not everyone's cut out for real estate. It's a lot of responsibility." The words sliced through me. My chest tightened, and I could feel every pair of eyes digging into me, measuring me, judging me. Mom hurried over, her face flushed. "Emily is doing just fine," she said firmly. "She's smart, hardworking, but," Chloe interrupted. "Oh, Aunt Maria, don't be so sensitive. We're just joking. It's family talk." Family talk. That's what they always called it. The thin veil that made cruelty sound acceptable. I wanted to disappear. My hands trembled as I reached for a glass of champagne just to have something to hold. The evening only got worse. During dinner, Brandon regaled the table with tales of his condo flipping success. Bought it at $400, sold it $600. Easy money. "Real estate is the only way to get ahead, really," he smirked at me. "Unless you like wasting cash on rent, of course." The table erupted in approving nods and laughter. I felt like a bug under a microscope. When the cake came out, Chloe stood beside Trevor to make a toast. Her voice carried across the terrace. "I just want to say how blessed I feel to be marrying not only the love of my life, but also someone who shares my vision. We're already house hunting for our first property together. 'Cause, as my dad always said, que paused for dramatic effect. Renting is for people who don't plan on building a future." The words hung in the air like poison. And then, as if on cue, her eyes landed on me. A sly smile curved her lips. The crowd chuckled knowingly. I sat frozen, the blood rushing to my ears, humiliation crawling through every inch of my body. Inside my head, the thoughts screamed. Why do I keep coming to these gatherings? Why do I let them do this to me? Can't I just stand up and say something? But my voice wouldn't come. My throat tightened, and all I could manage was a weak smile that betrayed none of the rage bubbling inside me. When the night finally ended, I hugged my parents goodbye in the parking garage. Mom rubbed my arm gently. "Sweetheart, don't listen to them. They only know how to measure life with money." Dad's jaw was tight, his eyes hard. They humiliate you because they think they're untouchable. But tables turn, Emily. They always do. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. As I drove home to my little rented apartment, their laughter echoed in my ears. I stared at the dimly lit street outside my window, my fists clenched. That night, lying awake in bed, I whispered to myself, one day, they'll regret mocking me. One day, I'll walk into a room and they'll have nothing left to laugh about. I didn't know when or how, but the seed was planted, and life, unpredictable as it is, was already working behind the scenes to give me the chance. For weeks after Chloe's engagement party, their words clung to me like shadows I couldn't shake. Every time I walked into my rented apartment, I'd hear Brandon's mocking voice. Almost 30, still paying someone else's mortgage. But instead of drowning in shame, something changed in me. That humiliation turned into fuel. I worked harder at my job, took on extra projects, and kept piling money into savings. My promotion had already boosted my income, and within months, I had built a solid down payment fund. Still, I didn't rush to buy. I knew I needed the right opportunity, something that would make every insult worth it. And then it happened. It was a rainy Tuesday evening when I got the call, Emily. It's Karen from L&R Realty. I think I've found a property you might be interested in. I frowned, shuffling papers at my desk. Karen, I told you, I'm not ready to buy just yet. I'm still looking. I know, but this one, well, it's unusual. And I thought you'd want to hear about it before it goes public. Something in her voice made me pause. Okay, what's the catch? She lowered her voice. It's a foreclosure. The owners fell behind on payments. You might recognize the address, minus 214 Maplewood Lane. I froze. Maplewood Lane. My heart skipped. That was Brandon and Chloe's parents' house, the mansion, where I'd spent countless holidays enduring their smug looks and whispered jokes. I gripped the phone tighter. You're saying my uncle's house is in foreclosure? Yes, the bank is moving quickly. If you're serious about buying, you'd need to act fast. My knees felt weak. Uncle Robert, the untouchable real estate king, losing his home. It sounded impossible, but the more Karen explained, though clearer, it became bad investments, debts piling up, and the market turning against him. The empire he bragged about was crumbling, and their fortress on Maplewood Lane was about to hit the auction block. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling of my small rented bedroom, my mind spinning. Could I really do it? Could I buy the very house where they humiliated me year after year? The thought alone sent a shiver of satisfaction through me. But another voice whispered in my head, what if you fail? What if you can't afford it? What if you're setting yourself up for embarrassment again? I pushed those doubts away. For years, I had let fear and shame dictate my choices. Not anymore. This was my chance not just to buy a house, but to take control of the narrative they'd written for me. By morning, my decision was made. The weeks that followed were a blur of paperwork, financing, and negotiations. I met with lenders, showed them my savings, my steady income, and the portfolio I'd built from small investments. For once, the odds were in my favor. The house went to auction, and I was ready. The bidding was fierce at first, but I stayed calm, calculated. My hand barely shook as I raised the paddle, countering every offer with quiet determination. Finally, when the auctioneer's gavel came down, the words echoed like music. Sold to bidder number 47. That bidder was me. 214 Maplewood Lane. The crown jewel of my cousin's smug superiority now belonged to Emily, the cousin they mocked for renting. I drove to the house the next day, keys trembling in my hand. Walking through those familiar halls was surreal. The grand chandelier still hung in the foyer, though it looked dimmer now. The echoes of laughter, their laughter, seemed to cling to the walls. I stood in the living room, the same place where Brandon once mocked me in front of everyone. My chest swelled with something between triumph and disbelief. "This is mine now," I whispered, running my fingers along the marble countertop, every inch of it. Mine. For the first time in years, I felt taller, stronger. But the real revelation wasn't the house itself. It was realizing that their wealth, their superiority, their so-called legacy, it was all fragile. One string pulled and it unraveled. And now the balance of power had shifted. I had a choice. I could keep the purchase quiet, move indiscreetly, and savor my victory in silence. Or I could wait for the perfect moment to reveal it, to let them see with their own eyes who was truly laughing now. I knew which path I'd choose. As fate would have it, that perfect moment came sooner than I imagined. Chloe's wedding was just around the corner. Invitations had already gone out. The family was buzzing, and once again, I'd be expected to attend, standing quietly in the corner while they flaunted their success. But this time, I wouldn't be the one standing small. This time, I'd be holding the ace no one saw coming. The day of Chloe's wedding arrived, and I'd never felt such a strange mix of nerves and anticipation. On the surface, everything was perfect. The church bells chimed. Guests flooded in, dressed in shimmering gowns and sharp tuxedos. Bank photographers buzzed around, capturing every angle. It was the kind of spectacle Chloe had always dreamed about, a stage big enough for her to show off her idea of perfection. But beneath all that glamour, I carried a secret heavier than the diamond on her finger. A secret that would flip her world upside down. I arrived with my parents, walking into the grand reception hall that followed the ceremony. The room glittered with chandeliers, gold-trimmed chairs, and towering floral arrangements. Waiters weaved through the crowd with trays of champagne. I noticed Brandon at the bar, laughing loudly, already surrounded by a group of cousins. Chloe, radiant in her wedding dress, held court near the stage with Trevor. Their smiles looked wide enough to crack. And then came the familiar sting. "Emily." Brandon's voice boomed. He motioned me over. "Glad you could make it." "Did you take the bus again? Or did your little shoebox apartment finally come with a parking spot?" The cousins laughed. I clenched my jaw. But for once, the anger didn't consume me. Instead, I felt a calm settle over me, like a storm finally ready to break. Chloe joined in, her eyes gleaming. "Oh, Mom, don't be mad. You know, we love you. Besides, maybe someday you'll meet a man like Trevor and finally be able to afford a house." Her words landed like knives, but this time I didn't flinch. I smiled, a small, knowing smile. "Well," I said evenly, "I actually already bought a house." Brandon raised an eyebrow. "You bought a house?" He snorted. "What, a studio flat somewhere with no windows?" "No," I said, letting my voice carry just enough to draw attention. "A family home. A big one on Maplewood Lane." Silence rippled through the group. Brandon's smirk faltered. Chloe blinked rapidly. "Wait, Maplewood?" Chloe's voice was tight, uneasy. I nodded. 214 Maplewood Lane. You know the one? The house where you used to host those holiday dinners?" Their faces drained of color. That's impossible," Brandon stammered. I tilted my head. "Is it? Because last week I signed the papers. The foreclosure went through, and now the deed has my name on it." Gasps spread through the crowd. Relatives turned to each other, whispering. Chloe's lips trembled. You bought our house?" "No, Chloe." My voice was sharp now, cutting through the murmurs. "I bought my house. The one you mocked me in for years. The one where you and Brandon reminded me I was just a renter. Well, guess what? I'm not renting anymore." The silence was thick, suffocating. And then, like lightning, Aunt Lillian stormed over, her face flushed with fury. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "Emily, you're lying. Tell everyone this is some sick joke." I pulled a neatly folded document from my purse. The deed. I had brought it on purpose, knowing this moment would come. I held it up high. "It's no joke." I said, my voice steady. "This is the official deed. My name, signed and sealed. 214 Maplewood is mine." Gasps echoed again. Phones flashed as guests whispered and snapped photos. The humiliation on my cousins' faces was delicious, like years of bitterness melting into sweet vindication. Uncle Robert appeared then, his face pale, sweat gathering at his temples. He looked smaller than I'd ever seen him. This isn't right," he muttered, his voice shaking. "That house is ours. It's our legacy." "Not anymore," I said firmly. "You lost it and I bought it." Funny how legacies can slip through your fingers, isn't it? The room buzzed with shock. Brandon opened his mouth, but no words came out. Chloe's mascara streaked down her cheeks as tears spilled. Trevor shifted uncomfortably, his perfect smile collapsing under the weight of reality. I leaned in just enough for them to hear me clearly. "Do you know what it feels like to be mocked, humiliated, treated like you're beneath everyone else? You made sure I knew every holiday, every family dinner, every chance you got. But now," I straightened, raising my chin high, "now every time you drive past Maplewood Lane, you'll have to remember the cousin you laughed at owns the house you lost. And no matter how hard you try, you'll never laugh me down again." The DJ awkwardly cleared his throat, trying to get the night back on track. Let's give a big cheer for the bride and groom," he shouted into the mic. But it was useless. The mood had shifted. The whispers didn't stop. Eyes kept darting toward Chloe and Brandon, pity and judgment, mingling in the glances. Their big night, their grand performance of superiority, was ruined. And I had never felt more powerful. When I left that night, my parents walked beside me, their heads held high. Mom squeezed my arm, tears shining in her eyes. "I've never been so proud of you, Emily." Dad chuckled, his voice low. "Told you the tables always turn." I smiled, taking a deep breath of the cool night air. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the cousin who rented. I wasn't the one at the bottom of the family chain. I was the one who had turned humiliation into triumph, okay? And the house on Maplewood Lane. It wasn't just property, okay? It was justice carved into bricks and walls. The weeks after Chloe's wedding were quiet. Strangely quiet. For the first time in my life, the phone didn't buzz with snide comments or invitations designed to remind me of my place. My cousins had gone silent. Aunt Lillian, too. The only updates I heard about them came from whispers through extended family. How Chloe's perfect wedding had ended in tears. How Brandon had stopped bragging on social media. How Uncle Robert had all but vanished from the real estate scene. Meanwhile, my life looked different, not just because of the house, but because of what it represented. Walking through the halls of 214 Maplewood Lane, I didn't feel small anymore. I didn't feel like the kid at the holiday table, clutching my plate while my cousins laughed. I felt free. Powerful at first. The house felt almost too big for me. The rooms echoed when I spoke. The closets yawned with emptiness. But slowly, I began to fill it with pieces of my own life. A bookshelf stacked with my favorite novels. Curtains Mom helped me sew. A cozy rug in the living room where Dad and I sat and watched football one Sunday afternoon. This wasn't their house anymore. It was mine. And every detail I added pushed away the ghosts of past humiliations. One Saturday, as I was tending to the backyard garden, Brandon pulled up in his car. I saw him from the corner of my eye, standing awkwardly by the gate. For once, his confidence was gone. He looked smaller, humbled. "Emily," he said finally, his voice low, "I just wanted to, see the place." I wiped my hands on my jeans and walked over. "You mean see the house you mocked me in? The one you swore I'd never own?" He flinched. Yeah, look, I was a jerk. I know that. I didn't think you'd ever." He trailed off, unable to finish. I let him sit in that silence for a moment. Then I said, "You should remember something, Brandon. Life has a way of humbling people. You thought money made you better, but it doesn't. Hard work, resilience, and kindness, those are the things that last. His eyes darted away, shame etched on his face. He didn't argue. He didn't mock. He just nodded slowly and left. It was the closest thing to an apology I'd ever get. As for Chloe, she never came by, but word spread that her marriage was already strained. Her husband, Trevor, wasn't thrilled about marrying into a family that had lost its crown jewel. Apparently, he had wanted status just as much as love. And when that status crumbled, so did the illusion. I didn't need to see her to know she was struggling. The silence said enough. Reflecting on it all, I realized something important. It wasn't about revenge. Not really. Buying the house wasn't just about proving them wrong. It was about proving myself right. It was about finally believing that I was enough, that I didn't need anyone's approval or validation to define my worth. I thought about all the nights I'd cried after family gatherings, all the times I'd felt like I wasn't measuring up. And then I thought about where I was now, standing tall in a home I'd earned with my own two hands. The pain had shaped me. The humiliation had fueled me, and the victory. The victory was mine to savor. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden light across the front porch, Mom and Dad came by for dinner. We sat together at the long dining table, the same one where I'd once been mocked and belittled. But now, there was no laughter at my expense, no smug smiles. It's just the warmth of family that truly mattered. Mom raised her glass. To Emily, she said softly, tears shining in her eyes. For teaching us all that patience and perseverance pay off, and for showing that kindness always wins in the end. We clinked glasses. I felt a lump in my throat, but it wasn't sadness this time. It was gratitude. As I lay in bed that night, the house quiet around me, I whispered the words I'd carried for so long. One day they'll regret mocking me. And they had. But more importantly, I no longer regretted who I was, where I came from, or how long it had taken me to get here. Because the journey was mine, and so was the victory. And as I drifted to sleep, I knew this wasn't just the end of a chapter. It was the beginning of a life where I no longer stood small in the shadows of others. I had taken back my story, and this time I was the one laughing. And that's how I turned years of humiliation into the sweetest victory. What did you think of my story? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one of them. If you enjoyed this tale of family conflict and revenge, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss another story. Your support helps me keep bringing these dramatic life lessons to light. Until next time. Remember, karma always finds its way back.